Friedrich Nietzsche was born in Germany in 1844. He was a philosopher, writer, and thinker. Many people believe his ideas changed how the world understands life and values. One of his most famous ideas is the phrase, "God is dead." This means people in his time stopped relying on religion as the guide for life. Instead, they trusted science and their own ideas. His works influenced many areas, like philosophy, literature, and psychology. Nietzsche's thoughts also shaped how people see morality. Morality is about deciding what is good or bad, right or wrong. His words made people question old beliefs and search for new answers to life's big questions. Though Nietzsche's ideas were often debated, his writing inspired generations of thinkers. Friedrich Nietzsche grew up in a religious family. His father was a pastor, which means he worked in a church. His grandfathers were also very involved in the church. Friedrich's father died when Friedrich was only 5 years old. After this, Friedrich lived with his mother, sister, grandmother, and 2 aunts. The family moved to a town called Naumburg in 1850. Here, Nietzsche went to school and began to show his love for learning and books. Nietzsche was a very bright student. In 1858, he joined a school called Schulpforta, one of the best schools in Germany. There, he studied many subjects, like Latin, Greek, and history. His teachers noticed that he had great talent in writing and thinking. After finishing school, Nietzsche went to the University of Bonn in 1864. He started studying theology and classical philology. Theology is about religion, but Nietzsche lost interest in it. Instead, he became more focused on studying ancient languages and ideas. He also loved music and started writing some musical pieces during this time. Music became one of his favorite hobbies. After 2 years, Nietzsche moved to the University of Leipzig. Here, he worked hard and learned even more about philosophy. At the University of Leipzig, Nietzsche discovered the works of Arthur Schopenhauer, a famous philosopher. Schopenhauer's ideas about life and suffering deeply influenced Nietzsche. Nietzsche also met Richard Wagner, a well-known composer of operas. Wagner's music and ideas became very important to Nietzsche at that time. The two became good friends, and Nietzsche often visited Wagner and his wife. Their friendship later had a strong impact on Nietzsche's thinking. In 1867, Nietzsche joined the military as a soldier. He served in the cavalry, which is a group of soldiers who use horses. Unfortunately, Nietzsche was injured while mounting a horse. The injury caused serious chest problems, and he had to leave the military. After that, Nietzsche returned to Leipzig to continue his studies. He also began writing articles for important academic journals. During this time, Nietzsche's love for music continued to grow. Wagner's operas inspired him, and Nietzsche believed music was a way to understand life. He also made a lifelong friend, Erwin Rohde, who was a fellow student of ancient Greek culture. They shared ideas and supported each other. Nietzsche's growing knowledge of philosophy, music, and literature helped shape his future works. He began forming ideas that would later make him famous. In 1869, Friedrich Nietzsche became a professor at the University of Basel in Switzerland. He was only 24 years old, which was very young for such a job. Nietzsche had not finished his doctorate, but his teachers believed he was a genius. They supported him, and the university gave him the job. At Basel, Nietzsche taught classical philology, which means the study of ancient languages and cultures. His students admired his knowledge. In 1870, a war broke out between France and Germany. Nietzsche volunteered to help as a medical worker, taking care of sick and injured soldiers. Sadly, he became very ill with dysentery and diphtheria. These diseases weakened him for the rest of his life. He returned to Basel to continue teaching. Over time, the stress of teaching and his poor health made Nietzsche unhappy. He felt the job was boring and wanted to focus on his own writing. During his time at Basel, Nietzsche became close friends with Richard Wagner. Wagner saw Nietzsche as a brilliant thinker and enjoyed their talks. However, their friendship later ended. Wagner's strong views on religion and nationalism upset Nietzsche, who had different ideas. In 1872, Nietzsche published his first book, The Birth of Tragedy. It talked about ancient Greek plays and how art could help people understand life. Many people did not like Nietzsche's book at first. They thought it was strange and hard to understand. Despite this, The Birth of Tragedy became important later and inspired many thinkers. It showed Nietzsche's unique ideas about art and culture. In 1879, Nietzsche left his job as a professor because of his poor health. He decided to spend his time writing instead of teaching. After leaving his teaching job, Friedrich Nietzsche's health got worse. He suffered from headaches, stomach pain, and bad eyesight, making life very hard. Nietzsche lived in different places, such as Switzerland, the French Riviera, and Italy. He stayed in small rooms or boarding houses to rest and write. He avoided large groups of people and spent most of his time alone. This gave him the quiet he needed to focus on his work. Despite his sickness, Nietzsche wrote many books during this time. One of his most famous works, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, was written between 1883 and 1885. The book is about a man named Zarathustra who shares new ideas about life and morality. It talks about being strong and creating one's own values. At first, the book was not popular, but later it became one of Nietzsche's most important works and inspired many writers and thinkers. Nietzsche also wrote books like Beyond Good and Evil and On the Genealogy of Morals. These works questioned old ideas about religion and morality. He said people should think for themselves and not follow traditional rules. His books encouraged readers to ask hard questions about life. In 1888, Nietzsche had his most productive year. He wrote books like Twilight of the Idols and The Antichrist, sharing his boldest ideas. By the late 1880s, Nietzsche believed his ideas could change the world. He saw himself as a teacher who would help people see life in a new way. However, his health continued to worsen. He was often in pain, but he never stopped writing. His books from this time are still studied today. Nietzsche's isolation allowed him to focus deeply on his ideas. Even though he was lonely, this time was important for his creative work. Friedrich Nietzsche created many new ideas that changed how people think about life, values, and meaning. One of his most important ideas is called nihilism. Nihilism means believing that life has no clear purpose or meaning. Nietzsche believed people felt this way because religion and old beliefs were losing power. He thought this was a problem, but also a chance for people to create their own values and find new reasons to live. Another key idea from Nietzsche is the will to power. He believed that life is driven by a desire to grow, improve, and become stronger. This idea shows how people and even nature try to overcome challenges to survive and succeed. Nietzsche said this will to power shapes all life. Nietzsche used this idea to explain why people create rules, art, or governments. He thought they were ways to show strength and achieve goals. Nietzsche also wrote about eternal recurrence. This is the idea that life might repeat itself over and over, forever, without any change. He asked how people would live if they knew their lives would repeat endlessly. Would they try to live better and accept every moment? Nietzsche believed only a strong person could fully accept eternal recurrence. He called this person the Übermensch, or Superman. The Übermensch is a person who creates their own values and lives without fear or regret. Nietzsche thought this was the highest way to live. The Übermensch is not selfish, but focuses on improving life for themselves and others. This idea inspired many people to think deeply about life. Nietzsche's ideas, like the will to power and eternal recurrence, are still debated today. They challenge people to see the world in a new way. Nietzsche's philosophy focuses on breaking old rules and creating new paths. He believed each person could be responsible for making their life meaningful. His ideas about nihilism, the will to power, and the Übermensch are all connected. They show his hope for a stronger, freer human spirit. Even today, Nietzsche's works inspire questions about life, values, and how people can live fully without relying on old systems or beliefs. In 1889, Friedrich Nietzsche had a mental collapse while in Turin, Italy. He could no longer think clearly or take care of himself. After the collapse, his friend Franz Overbeck brought him back to Basel. Nietzsche stayed in a hospital for some time before moving to his family's care. His mother looked after him until she died in 1897. Then, his sister Elizabeth took care of him. He spent his final years in Weimar. During these years, Nietzsche was very sick and could not write or speak much. He died in 1900 at the age of 55, after years of illness. After his death, his sister took control of his writings. Elizabeth changed many parts of his work to fit her own beliefs. She linked Nietzsche's name to ideas like nationalism and anti-Semitism, which were very different from what he believed. Elizabeth even created fake writings to make Nietzsche's ideas look more extreme. She used his name to support fascist ideas in the early 20th century. Many people misunderstood Nietzsche's true thoughts because of his sister's actions. This damaged his reputation for many years. Today, scholars have worked to correct these mistakes. They show that Nietzsche was against hate and nationalism, not in favor of them. After Nietzsche's death, his ideas became more popular. Writers, philosophers, and psychologists began to study his works and use his ideas. Nietzsche's writings inspired many people to think about life, values, and the meaning of existence in new ways. His influence can be seen in areas like philosophy, literature, psychology, and art. His thoughts changed how people understood these fields. Famous thinkers like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were influenced by Nietzsche's ideas. They used his thoughts to explore how people think and feel. Writers like Albert Camus and Thomas Mann also admired Nietzsche's works. They wrote books that showed his ideas in their characters and stories. Nietzsche's impact was not limited to Europe. His ideas spread around the world, affecting thinkers and artists in many different countries. Over time, people began to understand Nietzsche's true beliefs. Scholars corrected false ideas created by his sister after his death. Today, Nietzsche is seen as one of the most important modern thinkers. His works are studied in schools and universities around the world. Nietzsche's legacy shows the power of his ideas. They continue to make people ask questions and look for their own truths about life and values.